Get the whole Young Turks 3-hour show by going to theyoungturks.com. If you become a member, you get the whole show, plus a very fun post-game show as well. See you then. You know what that means? That means we're coming for you. I know it's a little dichotomy. JR coming in with some smooth music. I'm coming in a little rougher. Did I say J.R. Jackson? Is he back? Is that what's happening? Mr. Jackson, how are you?
What's up, man?
How's Miami? Did it kick ass?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm not going to come guns blazing about it, but yeah.
All right, so you didn't get
cool.
laid is what I'm hearing from you. I mean, let's get it straight.
Slim pickings, man.
In Miami, slim pickings.
Lots of people and slim pickings. Maybe I'm a stuck-up West Coast, dude. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I mean, but I prefer my Los Angeles women over Miami women any day.
You know what JR sounds like? He sounds like Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, saying, what? I only took a $9 million bonus. Do you know I took like a $64 million bonus 2 years ago? What? No, slim pickings. Slim pickings. All right. Well, you know what? You live, apparently, a life, well, in the lap of luxury, women-wise. So, not necessarily financially.
Well, I don't know. This is the thing. Number one, if I hear ever, one more time in my life, hear 2 words, who dat, ever again. Oh, whoever says it, I'm just going to slip through. I don't know. I'm not going to that, but I'm just going to punch him in the face. I don't want to hear it ever again.
Please, calm
ever
down.
again, I just don't want to hear it. And the thing is, I was rooting for the Saints. The Saints fans took over the city. I mean, everything was Saints. And that was the best part. They were fun. They know how to party. And they do it right. But oh, God. Who dat? Who dat? Hey, how you doing today? Who dat? Would you like some oysters maybe today? Who dat? You want to come in here and have a beer? Who dat? It's like this answer to everything.
The more you say it, the more I like it. I'm going to use that from today, from now on. All right, look, JR's got some more stories, including some questionable fashion choices that Saints fans have and why they were so dominant on South Beach. But we're going to save that to the postgame. Okay, we got a huge show ahead for you guys. You know what's happening in the third hour? Only Liz Winstead, the co-creator of The Daily Show, and Brian Unger, former correspondent for The Daily Show, in the studio. We're doing the third hour with us. Hello. Good night. Who dat? Okay, so that's going to be awesome. And we got a Congressman Rob Andrews going to come and talk to us about the state of the Democrats in the House, so that should be interesting. Obama's made a terrible error in supporting Wall Street, at least verbally, in what he has said, and strategically. So we will get to that a little bit later. And then there's this total nonsense about should the terrorists be tried in civilian courts. Now, we've been covering that for a long time, but there's a great little twist to it today. The Republicans really got caught, and I will share that with you. And just because I want to rub it in a little bit more to the caller from yesterday, yes, we will do more nonsense Sarah Palin stories, okay? And you know what? They're not that important. I just want to rub it in a little bit, okay? Because of course she screwed up again. Of course, of course. All right. So that's a little bit later. Now, let's start with what I think is probably the most important story out right now. And, you know, we've been talking about a lot in terms of is bipartisanship the right way to go, the wrong way to go. Well, you know that Obama's going to do a health care summit with both Republicans and Democrats on February 25th, and he's going to try to reach out to the other side again. So in that context, let's see what the Republicans are doing right now in the Senate as we speak, so we can get a better sense of whether this bipartisanship, and you know, Obama's been trying this for over a year, and then after the Massachusetts election, even more efforts, concerted efforts, whether that's working at all, right? So, well, we have the case of the nomination of Craig Becker to the National Labor Relations Board. Now, it's a very, very normal nomination. There's nothing particularly objectionable about Becker. I'm going to tell you the Republicans' objections to him in a second. But people say that, not people say, it is true that at this point in Bush's administration, 4 different Bush nominees had not been confirmed yet. Now, 4 nominees not confirmed over a year into his term, well, that's, you wish that everybody would get confirmed by then, or not get confirmed and get taken down and somebody new comes up, and that they would be resolved by then. 4, that's, you can say it's a bad number, but it's obviously a tiny, tiny number. And maybe that's how filibuster should be used, rare exceptions. guess how many nominees of Obama have been held up so far at this same juncture? 60. So, Democrats had held up 4 Bush nominees. Republicans held up 60 Obama nominees. Now, so when you go to Craig Becker and you say, all right, well, what's their main beef against him? I mean, he must be, extreme, right? Well, Mike Enzi, for lack of a better argument, gives these 2 arguments, and he's a Republican senator from Wyoming. He says, first of all, there are too many questions about Becker. Now, who's asking the questions? Well, here's the ironic and funny part. Enzi. Here's his quote. If a nominee garners a greater level of public scrutiny and larger than usual volume of questions, we should ask why. This unique scrutiny should be a signal that the individual has raised a great level of concern and controversy. But Enzi's the one that submitted the hundreds of questions in the first place. So that is an awesome piece of circular reasoning. Well, I submitted hundreds of questions to him. He didn't answer them wrong. It's not that he didn't answer them or that he gave bad answers. It's just, by the very fact that I submitted all these questions, you have to wonder what's wrong with a candidate like this. Now, does that make sense to any of you? I mean, if it does, then you're a Republican, because that logic escapes me, right? The second problem Enzi has is he says, look, we don't want this thing rushed through the Senate. He was brought up for nomination in April of 2009. What part of that is rushed? Okay. Sherrod Brown came out and gave a very strong speech saying enough is enough here in response to all of this. And he said even a half-dead organization would consider that pace anything but lethargic. Okay. So come on, let's go, let's go. Holding all these things up is ridiculous. And they have no real complaint against him. In fact, if you believe him, the Service Employees International Union president, Andy Stern, and now he's a liberal and he's on the progressive side, right? He says that Becker is someone who is, quote, respected by management and labor side attorneys, by academics, liberals, and conservatives alike. Now, that's one side saying, hey, everybody likes him. But they really, on the other side, is no case to be made. There is no, hey, this is what we don't like about him, or here are the list of conservatives who are against him for this reason or that reason. Nothing on the other side. Why? Because, as we all know, it's obstructionism. They just want to slow everything to a halt. They want to slow down Obama's agenda in every way possible, and they want to give him 0 votes no matter what the situation is, right? But then the government can't do its job. But you see, that's exactly what the Republicans want, for 2 reasons. One, they don't want a Democratic government to do its job because they don't agree with it, right? Now, if they're following the regular rules and they have the votes to stop it, okay, that makes sense. That's how democracy works. But in Becker's case, they put him up for a vote. He won 52-33. That's a huge majority that he won by. Except he didn't win because they filibustered him. So the side with the 33 votes beat the side with the 52 votes. How's that democracy? That's crazy. Now, that's crazy if you do it in one case. It's totally unacceptable if you do it in every case. Now, we can't have this. So now the Democrats are rightfully saying, hey, look, if you're going to do this to everybody, and this is a total, Pat Leahy said, I've been here over 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Filibusters are supposed to be something that is extraordinary. Now it is quite literally ordinary because they do it in almost every instance. Well, okay, then obviously you got to look into, if they're going to abuse the process, how do we change these rules? And that's a good question. You would begin that next January. You couldn't do it now, okay, when a new Congress is convened. Now, could you do it in a simple majority? Well, it depends. Now, in order to change the Senate rules, you need 67 votes, which you're never going to get. Okay, those days are long gone. That was back in the days, and Walter Mondale originally changed the filibuster rules. Remember, the filibuster is not in the Constitution. It's Senate rules. And it got changed on a couple of occasions, and in the 1970s, Mondale actually led the charge to change it to make it only 60 votes that you need rather than 2/3, right? So, but you need 2/3 to change the rule, which is never going to happen under these circumstances. It's not like the old days when you can get Republicans and Democrats to switch sides. Well, Democrats switch sides at the drop of a hat, but you can't get the Republicans to switch sides, right? So how do we do it then? Well, The way around that is a new proposal by the Democrats saying, hey, you know what? We could change how many votes it takes to change the Senate rule. So by a simple majority of 51 votes, we could say, you know what? You no longer need two-thirds majority to change any of the Senate rules, including the filibuster rule. You know what? That makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I want to protect the rights of the minority in the Senate. Okay, I think the filibuster is not that bad an idea overall. The question is, how do we use it? Because don't forget, Democrats are in the majority now. They could easily be in the minority. And when the Republicans have a majority and there is no filibuster, they will steamroll everything. They'll change every single thing you imagine instantly in the country within the first week. Okay, they're not going to be like the Democrats lollygagging around, right? So there is value in the filibuster, and you have to think about it long term. You know, they want to change it. Harkin has a proposal to start with 60 and then 57, 55, 51, instead of work your way down, and the more time you take to debate the issue. You know, my thought on it is maybe 55 senators is reasonable. So that protects the rights of the minority still very significantly, but at least it gets you a reachable goal. The Republicans can reach it if they have a big enough majority. Democrats can reach it if they have a big enough majority. But 60 is just undoable. It's far, far too large. So then you can't get anything passed if one side decides to abuse it. But there are a lot of proposals, but whereas before I would have said, hey, you know what, I'm not sure you should go down that path. Now I think, well, if it's going to be abused in this way and you literally can't get anything done in the Senate, well, then you have to look for a way to fix it. And maybe in January, some of these ideas should be considered. So now, by the way, you know what they're calling the Republican minority now? They're calling it the super minority. You remember how the Democrats, when they had 60 votes theoretically, were the super majority? Now the Republicans are saying, no, 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 we're in charge. We're the super minority. Now that seems insane, right? I mean, what does that mean in a democracy that you're the super minority? Well, Orrin Hatch said it about this Craig Becker vote. He said, well, look, Becker didn't pass because he was against the will of the Senate. Here, I'll give you the exact quote. I sincerely hope the White House does not circumvent the will of the Senate by appointing him when the Senate is out of session. Because Obama's saying, hey, listen, if you guys aren't going to abuse the process, well, then I got to seat these guys when you guys are on break. And there's no way around it because I need the government to function. I can't have all these empty seats. On the National Labor Relations Board, only 2 out of the 5 seats are taken. Now, that's a perfect thing that the Republicans block because they don't want labor to have a voice in the government. So they're like, oh, there's not enough people to do business on the National Labor Relations Board? They're like, perfect. I mean, when they're in charge, they stack the National Labor Relations Board, ironically, full of people from the business perspective. So big business gets all the seats in something that's supposed to help labor. So, but now when they're out of power, well, they can't do that, so they just stop it altogether by not confirming anyone, right? But Orrin Hatch's, hubris here goes to another level. Apparently, it's not. He shouldn't be confirmed because he's not the will of the Senate because 33 Republicans are opposed to him out of 100. That's just, look, that's just not math, okay? They're not. The will of the Senate, you would think, is about 51 senators. This has become absolutely absurd. Now, we're going to get to the media reaction in a second. But, on the idea of reaching out in a bipartisan way, should we not, et cetera, Representative Brad Miller, who's a fairly strong Representative George Miller from California, is a fairly strong progressive and an important member of the House because he's the chair of an important committee, the House Education Committee, says, look, Obama's going to do this bipartisan outreach. You know what it's going to get him? Not a damn thing. He says, I'm happy to have him do it. Have at it, Hoss. Go crazy. But we're wasting a lot of time. And at the end of that bipartisan outreach, I guarantee you he's going to get 0 votes on health care. 0. He's like, I already know. I work with these guys. They have shown no intention of budging, nor do they show any intention of budging in the future. And him doing a bipartisan summit ain't going to help at all. But okay, do it. But he says the same thing I do, which is, look, at the end of the bipartisan summit, well, then you're at a crossroads. If you keep reaching out to them, when they keep giving you 0 votes, well then, now I say that would be a fool's errand. Miller doesn't go that far, but Congressman Miller says, well, that doesn't make any sense and you're not going to get anything accomplished. So if they still give you 0 votes, that's when you got to get tough on them. Perfectly logical, but it's good to see a Democratic congressman and a powerful one come to that conclusion. Let's hope he can convince the White House that he's right on that. And then, Tom sent me this quote from Harry Truman because it relates to what we were saying about Rahm Emanuel yesterday, and it relates to this whole bipartisanship issue and whether Democrats should bother to reach out to the Republican Party more and more and more, or if they should actually fight for ideals. And Truman said this back in 1952, and as I read it to you, you're going to think, damn it, if that ain't true exactly right now. Listen to this. He says, I've seen it happen time after time when a Democratic candidate allows himself to be put on the defensive and starts apologizing for the New Deal and the Fair Deal and says he really doesn't believe in them. He's sure to lose. The people don't want a phony Democrat. If it's a choice between a genuine Republican and a Republican in Democratic clothing, the people will choose the genuine article every time. That is, they will take a Republican before they will take a phony Democrat. And I don't want any phony Democratic candidates in this campaign. Okay, I mean, that's how you do it. And Truman wasn't playing around, and he got the job done in 18 different ways. We got to remember that. Okay, now, how's the media handling this? Oh, we have a perfect instance of this. So they're talking about bipartisanship and whether the Democrats need to reach out to the right more. It's on Scarborough's program on MSNBC. And Mark Halpern is on. You know how I feel about him. And John Heilemann, who wrote the book with him, is on. He's going to come in at the very end of this, but Halpern and Scarborough are doing most of the talking here. And this is classic mainstream media 101. The Democrats are too liberal, and they need to go way, way, way further to the right, and that would cure their problems. Shocking. I didn't see that coming. I can't believe the mainstream media went in that direction. Look at these guys lie to you. Clip number 2.
As I said before, the closer they get to getting 3 Republicans, 10 Republicans, the leadership to cooperate, the more the left will go crazy. And if they want to get something done, they still need a majority.
Do you really think the left will go as crazy after they lost Massachusetts as they would have before
Every
then?
indication of how they've reacted since then, I believe, suggests that they will. They do not want a compromise. Anything that even Olympia Snowe is for, or even now that Ben Nelson is for, a lot of people on the left are just against.
Do they not understand, though, that Ben Nelson took a vote in Nebraska? This is the thing that's so astounding to me. You read some prominent left-wing blogs. They've been attacking Ben Nelson the entire time, calling him a corporate pig, saying that he's a traitor to the cause. He votes for health care reform. Do they not understand in Nebraska? His political career is over. Mark it down. Circle the date I said it. Ben Nelson's political career is over, and I hope some of the bloggers feel good because a Republican's going to own that seat for the next 50 years. Don't they understand they have to compromise?
I don't see any indication that they do, nor do I think they understand that they can't get the votes now for a public option. Do they think they're going to be closer to getting those votes in November and January after there's a new Congress?
Ted Kennedy's seat is now Scott Brown's seat. Evan Bayh is fighting for his political life.
They're moving farther away from what they want.
They will never get Evan Bayh's vote again on the type of health care bill they got before, because Evan Bayh, because of that vote, now is and you could say the same for Mary Landrieu. You could say the same for our friend in Missouri, Claire McCaskill. You could say the same for a lot of Blanche Lincoln. And I'll guarantee you, the other Nelson in Florida has been watching what's been going on. And Bill Nelson, he ain't going to be lurching left because he's up in 2012 as well.
Yeah, go ahead, John. Well, and the left is mad at Obama, even for talking this way. They're mad at Obama. They think that even this talk is ridiculous, that he should just do reconciliation and pass the health care bill now. It's a fantasy.
Boy, they're going to drive, Dylan, they're going to drive Barack Obama's administration and the Democratic majority off the cliff if they don't wake up.
All right. By the way, conservatives say all the time, MSNBC is liberal. They have a 3-hour block in the morning which just regurgitates the Republican talking point, one after another, after another, after another. I mean, they might as well have John Boehner and Mitch McConnell host that show. Okay, so now let's break down all the falsehoods they had in there. First of all, the left is against anything that Olympia Snowe or Ben Nelson says. Yeah, we're idiots. We just, what is it? Oh, no, then I'm against it if Snow's for it. No, we look at what it is. If you're in favor of something that makes sense, then I'm in favor of it. In fact, I've given credit to Senator Shelby in the past when he came out in favor of some of the financial reforms, which now he's backtracked on. Senator McCain has worked with Senator Cantwell. No, you look at the actual content, unlike you knuckleheads, right? The reason we're against Snowe and Ben Nelson in that particular case is because they wanted to kill the public option, which is going to introduce competition and lower the costs, because we're interested in lowering costs and lowering the deficit, okay? Now, if you were a conservative, you would agree with us, but of course you're not. You're a corporatist. That goes to the most important point. They pretend as if Evan Bayh and Ben Nelson and Olympia Snowe and all these people are quote-unquote centrists. And if the Democrats aren't centrist like them, well, then they're the loony left, and that they go crazy. The left will go nuts. Like we're not paying it. Like we don't pay any attention to the issues. We don't know what we're talking about. We're like children, right? No, you're the one misrepresenting the facts. The fact is, all those people are not centrist. They don't have a conservative ideology. They don't have a moderate ideology. They have an ideology of, well, first of all, it's not an ideology. It's how can I please the corporate lobbyists better? Because the public option, as an example, lowers the deficit by hundreds of billions of dollars, according to the CBO. Okay? Now, the conservative position would be to support that, or at least you could certainly make an argument for that. But they don't make that argument. They say, like Joe Lieberman, for example, says, oh, I'm against the public option because I want to lower the deficit. Well, then you're lying, right? So why is he lying? Because the real interests that they represent are the health insurance companies, the drug companies that pay them millions of dollars. They give millions of dollars to their campaigns. But Joe Scarborough's never going to tell you that. Mark Halpern's never going to tell you that, because their agenda is, no, pretend the corporate policies and what the lobbyist special interest desires are what are moderate, reasonable, and centrist. And that if you don't agree with that, well, then you're crazy. And that you're not really thinking about the issue, and you don't understand politics. Well, that brings us to reconciliation. At the end there, Heilemann says, oh, that's a fantasy. Really? When the Republicans were in charge, it was perfectly practical. It wasn't a fantasy. They passed the largest tax cuts in history through reconciliation. But when the Democrats are in charge, don't you even think about it. That's a fantasy. No, Republicans are allowed to use it. You're not allowed to use it. Of course you could use reconciliation. And if you do, I get that Ben Nelson has issues at home. Now, partly because he never makes his own case. He doesn't make the progressive case. We just ran an ad of Ben Nelson's, and he was talking about how the Republicans are right about everything. Well, if you don't make your case, of course you're going to lose. And then point number two is, look, even if he made the best case, in Nebraska, the conservative movement has tied itself to the corporate interests through the Rush Limbaughs, et cetera, so much that he might lose. So if Nelson votes against the bill, the health care bill, I understand, okay? And would I rather have Nelson than a Republican in that seat? Yes, I would. And I've talked about that many times. Okay, so then what do? You go to reconciliation, so you don't need Ben Nelson's vote. So you say, Ben Nelson, Mary Landrieu, Blanche Lincoln, if you think that's what you got to do to collect your lobbyist cash to fund your campaigns and to pretend you're a conservative when you're not really a conservative, okay, have at it, Hoss. I don't need your votes. I only need 51 votes. Now, there is no reason why you can't go through reconciliation, and the Bush administration did it over and over again. And the same talking heads said, oh, it's brilliant, it's strong. That's the way you do it. So they're lying to you and then pretending that the other side doesn't know what it's talking about. And these guys either A, don't have any idea what they're talking about and don't know a thing about politics, or B, are purposely misleading. All right. Now, when we come back, ironically, Scarborough apparently recognizes that and is going to make the reverse argument. Okay, Young Turks.
The #1 progressive talk show, don't you forget it. That's right. Politics.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, J.R. Jackson. Am I? I'm your host, J.R. Jackson is back, and he's producing the show. The other day we were at a diner, my dad, my wife, and I, and we saw a guy who's a Native American actor. I believe he played Geronimo, but I'm not entirely sure. He's played every Native American in every movie. But I was dying to go up to him and say, I am Geronimo. Who are you? That was my favorite movie quote for like a decade. But luckily, I wasn't that much of an idiot that I went and did that. All right, Jesus Godoy is directing. Now, we have fun, absurd Sarah Palin stories for you in this hour. Conservatives praying for the death of Democrats, and apparently that prayer worked. Okay. I don't think it really worked. I'll give you a heads up on what I really think about that. But that is, of course, ridiculous and outrageous. That's going to be a little bit later in the program. And we have Democratic Congressman Andrews going to come on and tell us what's going on the House side. Now, what I want to start with, though, is a blunder by Barack Obama. So President Obama is getting interviewed by Bloomberg News. And he's doing this interview because he wants to show that he's reaching out to the business community. Now, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about that. He tells the interviewer, or his staff does, hey, you know, we're meeting with CEOs and executives right down the hall in the White House, and the whole point of this is to reach out to business interests and to show them that we're not their enemy. Now, gee, I wonder why they're doing that. It couldn't be because all of a sudden the Republicans have been saying, hey, Wall Street, you should work with us, and you should give us more lobbyist money than you give the Democrats. There's been a number of stories about that. We covered it on the show, and the Wall Street executives saying, I don't know, we just might take the money away from the Democrats and give it to the Republicans. So now Obama's reaching out and go, no, please, don't hit us, don't hit us. We still want your money. I think it's crystal clear. Now, they claim, of course, after things got a little messy for them, that is not what they're doing. But no one believes that, so as you're about to see from these quotes. So these are the quotes that got Obama in a little bit of trouble. First, he says, well, look, first of all, I know both those guys, referring to Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, who got a $9 million bonus, and Jamie Dimon, who got a $17 million bonus, who's the CEO of JP Morgan, right? He says, I know both those guys. They're very savvy businessmen, and I, like most of the American people, don't begrudge people success or wealth. That's part of the free market system. Okay, wait. Now, what do you mean that's part of the free market system? The whole problem here is that we went outside of the free market system. We did the TARP program, and we injected all that cash and all that easy credit into those companies. If it was part of the free market system, we wouldn't have any problem at all. We wouldn't even be discussing this. However much they want to pay their CEOs would be their business, not our business. The problem is taxpayer money was involved. This ain't the free market. And for Obama to say that, I mean, one, that's outrageous. Two, it's not factually correct. And three, it's an obvious and naked plea to the bankers, please keep giving the Democrats money. He continues. He says, this is quote number 2. I do think that the compensation packages that we've seen over the last decade at least have not matched up always to performance. I think that shareholders oftentimes have not had any significant say in the pay structure for CEOs. Now, look, that's good, because now he's trying to say, hey, look, you know what? Shareholders should have more say. That's true. He's saying, you know what? Sometimes the CEOs get overpaid. But in this instance, apparently he doesn't think they're getting overpaid. So now he's going to get himself into more trouble with quote number 3. Listen, $17 million is an extraordinary amount of money. Of course, there are some baseball players who are making more than that who don't get to the World Series either. So I'm shocked by that as well. Now, hold up. Okay, these aren't baseball players, right? I'll let Paul Krugman do the talking here. First of all, he thought all these quotes were clueless. And in his blog, Krugman wrote, oh my God, what have you done here, right? But on the baseball players, he makes a great point. First of all, to my knowledge, irresponsible behavior by baseball players hasn't brought the world economy to the brink of collapse and cost millions of innocent Americans their jobs and or houses. Of course, why do you think we're not livid about the baseball players' salaries? We're amused by the salaries, and we're amazed by the salaries, but they didn't ruin the economy. It's not their fault, okay? Now, on the issue of the whole first part of the quote on whether it's a free market or not, Simon Johnson had a terrific quote. So let me read that to you. He said, what we have now is not a free market. It is rather one of the most complete and awful instances ever of savvy businessmen capturing a state and the minds of the people who run it. Is this really what the president seeks to endorse? Another great question. Simon Johnson had more devastating quotes. He says, this is the antithesis of a free market system. Not only were the banks saved by the government action in 2008 and 2009, but the overly generous nature of this bailout means that the playing field is now massively tilted in favor of these banks. Not only that, but the incentives of the people running these mega banks is now to take on a reckless amount of risk. They get the upside, for example, in these compensation packages, and when the downside materializes, this belongs to the taxpayers and everyone who loses a job. Again, exactly right, okay? Now, Obama's got to realize this. And then finally, I'll come back to Krugman for one more quote here because he talks about the political implications, which I agree with. He says, Obama thinks his key to electoral success is to trumpet, quote, the influence of corporate leaders have had on his economic policies. We're doomed. That's right. Obama, you can't think this is smart politics. But this is exactly why we're concerned that you're too concerned about lobbyists and special interests and corporate America and Wall Street. How do you not see that? Because the reality is you are that concerned. I mean, you're willing to go out in public and defend these guys. Now, his defense has been, no, you don't understand. We've said this many times that we don't begrudge their salaries. I don't know why people are going mental now, and we're just trying to defend the free market system. But look, we're going mental now because they're getting these huge bonuses when they got backed up by the taxpayers. Nobody begrudges anybody if you're actually part of the free market system. But if we're paying those salaries, that's why we're upset. How could you not know that? But you do know that. And you're just trying to protect these guys, which is terrible politics and even worse policy. So he really stepped in it now. And he should get the flag for it, rightfully so. That's unacceptable. Now, of course, ironically, the National Republican Senatorial Committee and all the other Republican outlets are all over this. And they're trying to paint Obamas with the bankers, which is roughly true. Then they're trying to paint themselves as populists who are against the bankers, which is entirely false. So, as we stand now, Obama's proposals in the Senate, when you get to the policy side, are much tougher than they used to be. So, as we were telling you yesterday, he's making steps in the right direction. And the people blocking those policies are the Republicans. And they bragged in the Wall Street Journal, they bragged in the New York Times, Wall Street, we're on your side, and we're going to try to kill all these proposals, right? But now when Obama makes a statement like this, the Republicans get the best of both worlds. They get to take the bankers' money, which have now shifted to the Republicans, and then they get to say, oh, Obama's with the bankers. I mean, that's incredibly foolish thing for Obama to do. You're in a lose-lose. You're trying to incrementally do the right thing, and you're getting no credit for it, and you're losing the lobbyist money. Is Rahm Emanuel the genius behind this? I don't know. It doesn't matter. You know what? Ultimately, Obama makes his decisions. He makes the quotes. He's the one that did the interview. He's the one that thought it was a great idea to put out a huge flag and say to the American people, we're on the bankers' side. We're on the bankers' side. Bad idea, genes. So now, that's the disaster that's happened here. Look, you know what? Let me give it one more little bit of context to be fair to Obama. Let me give you his fourth quote to Bloomberg, which makes it a little better, not much better, but let me give that to you. He says, I guess the main principle we want to promote is a simple principle of say on pay, that shareholders should have a chance to actually scrutinize what CEOs are getting paid. And I think that serves as a restraint and helps align performance with pay. The other thing we do think is that more pay comes in the form of stock that requires proven performance over a certain period of time, as opposed to quarterly earnings, is a fairer way of measuring the CEO's success and ultimately will make the performance of American business better. Now, look, that's a lot more reasonable. And those are two real reforms that he's talking about. Make sure that the owners of the companies, the shareholders, have a say in CEO pay. That's good. And then the second part of it is, hey, look, they need to take this in stock so that they're wedded to the success of the company. And to be fair to Blankfein and Diamond, they are taking it in stock. And so that means that they can't get this money out for another 5 years. So if Goldman Sachs goes under in the next 5 years, Blankfein doesn't get paid that $9 million to a large degree, right? Now, that's a much better incentive structure because then it gives you an incentive to keep the company more financially healthy in the long run, okay? But your good points, Obama, are lost in a sea of terrible politics. Nobody's paying attention to those quotes. And nobody's paying attention to what you're trying to do right because you just planted your flag in favor of Wall Street with your earlier quotes. Come on, you got to be better than this. I thought these guys were political geniuses. I don't know what happened here. Could be that perhaps they're not political geniuses. Now, meanwhile, of course, we're also told that if we want to take back the corporate money, we can't do that. If we can't take back the bonuses, Geithner tells me that all the time. The Republicans tell me that all the time, et cetera, et cetera. Guess what Switzerland just did for UBS, which is their largest bank? They went ahead and took back $282 million in bonuses. They're like, you know why we took that back? Because UBS was propped up by Swiss taxpayers, and you didn't make any money last year. So why would you get a $282 million bonus? Now, these things are so startlingly obvious, right? But for some reason, you know, we're told by Democrats and Republicans and the press in this country, largely so, that it can't be done. And when you see other countries do it, you go, of course it can be done. Of course it can. All right. Listen, I got one more economic story for you about how the middle class is getting totally hosed. But I'm going to save that for a little bit later, and then the fun Sarah Palin stories as well. When we come back, Congressman Andrews, Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk, Brian, Liz, Anna, everybody's here. And I believe we're going to go to what is being called a whore reporter. What's that all about, Anna?
A whore reporter is someone who is known as being involved in some sort of sex scandal, right? Mm-hmm. And she gets a job as a reporter. Mm-hmm. Like Ashley Dupre, she gets her own column. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily reporter, but she gets her own column.
She'd be more of a whore columnist.
Whore columnist.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But we have a new whore reporter, and it's Rachel Usatel.
Ukatel.
Is it ukulele?
Who could tell? What did she do before she was a reporter? Did she go to reporter girl school?
She didn't go to reporter school. Girl school.
She went to Tweet University or Text University, I believe. Text is A&M.
If that journalism school is in Tiger Woods' crotch, then she went there.
It is.
That's where she went to school.
I think so.
To Liz's question, Anna, I mean, the only thing she ever did was sleep with Tiger Woods, right? I mean, I'm sure that's not the only thing she did in her life,
right.
But I mean, that's why they've hired her, right?
She's known, okay? She's known for sleeping with a lot of different celebrities.
Oh, never mind. Then I take it back. Then she's totally qualified.
She's
right.
She's a New York socialite. Okay?
Oh, she is.
Well, then obviously that makes you a journalist, obviously.
Right, so she's the perfect person for Extra. Extra has hired her.
Oh, we're talking about Extra.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're confusing journalism and Extra, not so much this ukulele chick with journalism.
Yeah, Bill Moyers didn't hire her. What are you talking?
She doesn't work for NPR like you do.
She's the new Charlene Hunter Gold.
Yeah,
They're very excited.
Her work in Haiti was incredible.
Yeah.
You could tell.
So what's she going to do for Extra?
Well, she's going to be a special correspondent, all right?
Of course she
It's
is.
like Special Olympics.
What does that mean, special correspondent?
Well, she's going to be talking about hot spots and nightclubs and
Right.
things like
We need more
that.
of that.
And she's probably going to participate in interviews with semi-celebrities like John Gosselin or...
Anyone she hasn't slept with? Or is it exclusively the celebrities she has slept with?
I don't know. I think there are very few celebrities that she hasn't slept with, so who knows?
I think it's fantastic that people who have master's degrees in journalism from schools like Columbia and Northwestern can't get arrested. Papers are folding everywhere. And she's going to go report on hotspots.
I hope the interviews are actually in her vagina. I hope they set up three lights, 3-camera shoot. Mm-hmm. She's actually gonna climb inside her vagina and conduct an interview with other people in her vagina.
It is. It's a segment on Extra called Under the Hood.
I like
and
it.
It's going to be. Climb on in. Cenk, I was a co-anchor at Extra for 30 seconds before they fired me.
Shut up! Really? I didn't know that.
Oh yes.
And I'll tell you,
Brian.
Is that the promo?
And the stories we were breaking. My God, the journalism that we were doing over there.
What happened there?
What happened to me?
Sure.
No,
what was your experience there?
It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. They just don't want you getting close to the truth, and I got too close to the truth. I asked Keanu Reeves if there would be a Point Break 2, and that was offensive to him.
Oh, really?
And he reported me to the PR police, and they came and slapped my wrist for it. That stuff won't stand in Hollywood. You can't ask those hard-hitting questions.
See, but that goes to a serious point. You know how we always talk about how in politics they sell out to the politicians because they want the access. CNN wants the senators to come on, so
Yes.
they never say anything wrong about the senators.
Yes.
And in the entertainment world, they need access to Keanu Reeves, et cetera.
Yeah.
I had similar things. I was a TV writer for a little while for USA Networks, and there was some pilot I was working on, and I wrote a joke about Kevin Costner. And that was supposed to be my job. And they're like, oh, that's really funny. We're going to have to take it out.
Yeah.
Because that would gravely offend Kevin Costner, and we can't do that. So obviously we're going to have to make it this really insipid and bland so that it doesn't offend anyone. In another instance, I was working for a TV station down in Miami. I asked Rebecca Romaine Stamos at the time if she knew her character in X-Men was a lesbian in the cartoons. That's interesting, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Right, and because she's doing that character, etc. I got banned from the PR
No.
Jake,
circuit. I'm done.
how could you ask a question so hurtful? How could
And
you do
truthful.
that? That truth.
How dare you get
got
at the
too
truth.
close to the truth. That was like the white paper for her. That was just, you can't do that. You can't. Now, Jennifer Aniston, in fact, she chairs like a rape benefit, like an event to raise money for rape awareness. And at the event, I said to her, I thought I would come up with something substantive to ask her, because it's just not like, hey, what are you going to do next after Friends? So I
Right.
said, how come so many women are raped by guys they know?
Right,
Like,
gay
how
rape,
come-
a huge issue.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know, and started breaking down in front of me. So I said, it's okay, you don't have to answer that. That question got me fired. Her publicist called my boss and said, how dare you ask a question about rape at a rape benefit?
No, but you see, that's
Seriously,
why. Because Brian, people don't know. Like they don't know why we get the boring TV that we do.
Yeah.
They don't know why that they only ask the most, trivial, uninteresting questions. Oh, so what happened on the set, et cetera. Because you ask the interesting question, you get fired.
Right.
That's right.
Right. And that's why you weed people out that are interesting and smart, and eventually you're left with what's on television.
Yes.
I just expect if a celebrity or someone famous who's in the public eye puts themselves out there for a humanitarian cause or whatever, a philanthropy, they should have
Know about it.
Know about it. The depth to answer some questions about it, some statistics, be reasoned enough to explain it to someone.
And
I made that stupid assumption. I'm sorry. Jennifer Aniston, I'm so sorry about the bad rape event meltdown.
yeah.
I'm so glad you got to finally say that.
Dad, I've been waiting for years
You have
to say,
been.
get
You've
that
been
off my
swallowing
chest.
that. That has been in your throat, and now you're free.
When you start talking about rape and swallowing it in my throat in the same conversation, I get a little nervous.
I'm wrong.
They're going to edit that out, probably.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to Yucatel for a second. So substance gets you fired, right? But if you're a celebrity for just having sex with someone or doing something wrong, that gets you hired.
Yes.
So look at the incentive and disincentive system that we've set up. So why are people desperate to get famous? Why do they leak porn tapes of themselves? Why do they do crazy things like this? Because you get rewarded for it.
You get rewarded.
I will even go further that I believe that in this, since the economic meltdown, I think the message to all young people who want to do anything is to fight like mad for the job they want or get some sort of infamy and then fail at it, and you will become rich and famous.
It's
because
true.
our government is rife with people who have failed miserably and are rewarded. Our entertainment culture are loaded with people who have failed time after time after again and are rewarded for it. We reward failure now. That's what we do. In fact, it's probably the largest sector of our economy, failure. We don't make anything. We do make some things, but not as much anymore. Failure is what we do. We fail at a lot of things, and the people, they make a lot of money doing it.
The failure-facturers?
Failure-facturers.
You know, in the middle of doing this show, however many years ago, that point you're making finally dawned on me. I was like, I don't get it. Why are these people in these positions? Because we're trained to and brought up to believe that people who are successful get to the top in politics, entertainment, whatever it is, right? And finally you realize, they didn't get to the top because they're successful. They got to the top because they were kissed the ass of the boss. They played ball, right? You know what? And as much as this absolutely sucks, if you want to get to the top, the number one way to do it is play ball. Okay?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whatever the system is.
That's right.
If you're at extra, don't ask any interesting questions. If you do, you'll get fired. If you ask uninteresting questions, you're playing ball. You'll get promoted.
Right.
And
Right.
Tim Geithner, Ben Bernanke, what did they do with the Wall Street guys? They played ball.
Right.
They said, all right, who do you need to rob? Okay,
Right.
we'll look the other way. And what happened? They got promoted under the Republicans. They got promoted under the Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible, but that winds up being the lesson.
So how do you tell a young person in college how to be successful, get a job, make enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life? It's almost like you can't say that to them. You go out and do the best job and be brilliant at something. I don't know.
Well,
I think Apple is the only person, like Steve Jobs, people who work for Apple are the only people who are doing something interesting.
Right.
It's
innovative.
It is a dichotomy because, look, I got two young nephews. One's a freshman in college and the other one's a sophomore in high school. And so they asked me about their careers. And I said, look, it depends on your priorities. What do you want to accomplish? If you want money, you should go into finance because that's where the money is. And those guys, I mean, of all my friends, the ones that went into finance are ridiculously rich.
Yeah.
And others are busting their ass, and I got a friend who's an engineer, works so damn hard, but he's an engineer. And America doesn't value engineers anymore. So he makes a limited amount of money. And then a guy who's on Wall Street is making $1 gazillion. But if your objective is not to make the most amount of money, well, then you do, of course, then you go with the cliche of do what you love. And I don't want to be too pessimistic, right? If you do what you love.
I agree.
I mean, look at us, right? And we're all, relatively successful, and we're honest, and now there's a little bit of an outlet for it. Online, they haven't figured out a way to stop it yet.
Right.
Because honesty gets quashed everywhere, but they haven't quite quashed it online yet.
Right.
I don't think Extra thought all of this through, though, with Ms. Yucatel. Because if you're a celebrity on a red carpet and you're walking through and Rachel Yucatel is there and she says, hi, how was this working with Meryl Streep? And then that celebrity says, didn't you sleep with Tiger Woods? Like, this is strange. Why are you asking me this question?
Hi, I'm Rachel Yucatel from Tiger Woods' phone.
Yeah.
Bedroom.
Hi, I'm
and
the person
hotel
who
room.
wrecked Tiger Woods' marriage. Can I ask you a question? So, is she uniquely qualified to ask Meryl Streep a question
Or
on
is
a
she
red carpet?
repulsive?
But I don't think that they're...
I mean, I would be repulsed if she approached me.
I'd be a little... wouldn't you want to talk about that? Hey, I want to interview you. What was that like? What the hell was going on there Thanksgiving night?
But remember, those people succeeded, the celebrities. Not all of them, and there are a decent number of smart, thoughtful celebrities. But a lot of them, they don't know, they got there for the similar reasons. So they're not thinking like, oh, Yucatel's too below me. I mean, because a lot of them failed up.
I was on The Celebrity Apprentice.
Wow,
How
she is cheapening celebrity.
Right.
She is bringing it down. Jake.
I remember when celebrities used to be ex-Survivor cast.
People. Yeah. What about those?
What happened to those people?
Now they're just breaking up marriages. God, whatever happened?
Sad, really.
Unfortunately, we're out of time.
We are?
Yeah.
But we didn't even get to the Saudi pig.
I know. All right, well, next time.
That sounded awful. no disparity. It was just one particular man.
Yeah.
Who was a pig.
It's a good tease.
He's going to get his punishment, though. We'll tell you that on another show. All right, Brian Unger,
Jake,
Liz
thank
Winstead,
you.
thank you so much.
Thank you
really
for having us here.
Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a post-game show coming up, so everybody stay tuned for that, and we're going to hear JR's Miami stories, where there's some wild things going on, crazy things, and what was wrong with the things that people from New Orleans were wearing. Interesting. That's in the post-game show for members only. We'll see you there, Young Turks. Thanks for watching the video podcast. And, of course, if you become a member on theyoungturks.com, you can get the whole 3-hour show.
Plus an uncensored post-game show.
Those are fun. Young Turks.